Pentagon just released a list of 20 Chinese companies that are actually controlled by the Chinese military. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. There's a very thin line between large Chinese companies and the Chinese Communist Party. But the Pentagon has just rolled out with a list of 20 Chinese companies that aren't just close to the Communist Party, but to the party's military, the People's Liberation Army.
The Trump administration has drawn up a list of companies from China that have ties to the country's military, which may lay the groundwork for fresh U.S. sanctions. They include tech giant Huawei, the video surveillance company Hikvision, as well as China Mobile and China Telecom, both of which are publicly listed in New York.
This is a big deal. The designation by the Pentagon enables the president to declare a national emergency and then penalize the companies on the list with sanctions if they operate in the U.S. Again, one of those companies is Huawei. The U.S. government has been calling Huawei a national security threat with links to the Chinese military. And they've been saying that for a long time, including during the Obama administration. The Trump administration blacklisted Huawei last year, which meant that U.S. companies were not allowed to do business with them. And the Commerce Department has continued to restrict Huawei's ability to use U.S. technology after the company tried to get around being blacklisted. The Trump administration has also blacklisted Hikvision, another company on the Pentagon's list, for helping the Chinese Communist Party surveil and lock up millions of Uyghur Muslims. This new list of 20 companies tied to the PLA didn't come out of the blue. It was required by the 1999 National Defense Authorization Act. Basically, when President Clinton pushed for China to enter the World Trade Organization, there were people who were like, you know China is run by a brutal authoritarian regime that has talked about destroying America, right? So, Congress inserted this requirement into that year's National Defense Authorization Act as basically a way to make sure the CCP wouldn't use its membership in the WTO to get military tech that could be turned against America. It allows the U.S. president to apply the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to Chinese military-linked companies operating within the United States. In other words, sanctions, which would be a serious escalation from the boatload of tariffs President Trump has already hit China with. It's not clear whether other administrations had previously compiled a list of PLA-linked companies, even though they were supposed to. Last year, a bipartisan group of congresspeople sent a letter to the Pentagon requesting the latest list. And the Pentagon released this new list in response. Now, most of the companies on the list are state-owned, and many of them are doing business with U.S. companies, like how in 2012, China's AVIC set up a joint venture with General Electric, or how China's CRRC got contracts to supply passenger trains to Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Like I said, this is the first time the Pentagon has released this list publicly. But it doesn't mean that sanctions against these companies will happen. It only means they can happen. The Trump administration may be using it as a bargaining chip. Last year was the year of, let's make a deal. But this year, the trade war kind of got overtaken by the CCP virus. This is Trump in a recent interview with the Wall Street Journal.
I think the trade deal is a great deal, but ever since we got hit with the Chinese plague, I feel different toward everything having to do with China.
Chinese plague? I'm sure that won't offend anyone. But anyway, there seems to be growing momentum in the Trump administration for decoupling the U.S. economy from China.
America's top trade negotiator, Ambassador Robert Lighthizer, on Wednesday told Congress he did not think it would be possible to, quote, decouple the economies of the two countries. Trump contradicted Lighthizer in a tweet Thursday, writing, quote, "The U.S. certainly does maintain a policy option under various conditions of a complete decoupling from China."
But there is a flaw with the Pentagon list. Though it claims companies like Huawei are owned or controlled by the CCP's military, it doesn't address the fact that by Chinese law, any Chinese company has to help the military if they're asked to. They call it military-civil fusion. And according to the fine print of a new document that the CCP just released, China will ramp up joint military-civilian efforts to develop cutting-edge technologies. In other words, the Chinese Communist Party is completely erasing the line between itself, Chinese companies, and the military. And it seems like the US is finally calling that out. And now it's time for me to answer a question from one of you, a fan who contributes to China Uncensored through the crowdfunding website Patreon, so we don't have to rely on money from Chinese companies that are helping China's military. Kevin Dominic Aliaga asks, what do you think of the South China Morning Post? Is it a reliable source? Well, Kevin, I have mixed feelings about the South China Morning Post. But obviously I reference it sometimes, like I did a couple of minutes ago in this video. So, on one hand, the South China Morning Post does have some good reporting, and they're willing to be critical of the Chinese regime, at least in their online edition. Like this article from last November about how China is detaining Uyghurs at concentration camps and prisons. But it really makes you wonder why in October, when I picked up their print edition in Hong Kong, the front cover had a full-page ad that looked like this. Happy anniversary, CCP, for taking over China. And the front page lavished praise on Xi Jinping, the dictator who put all those Uyghurs in the concentration camps and prisons. You see, about 4 years ago, the South China Morning Post was bought by Alibaba, one of China's largest companies. And since then, the reporting, and especially the editorials, have gotten more and more of a pro-CCP slant. So, the South China Morning Post is a mixed bag. In general, I'd say their online stuff is hit or miss, but definitely has some solid reporting now and then. But their print edition is best used for wrapping fish. If you're looking for independent news about Hong Kong in English, I recommend the Hong Kong Free Press instead. Thanks for your question, Kevin. And thank you for watching. Support China Uncensored the way Kevin does. Contribute $1 or more per episode on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/China Uncensored to learn more. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.